Okay, so today's topics are how to create, inclusive and robust websites, applications, and then, that sort of blends into recruiting and things like that. Um, I guess I think just a couple of points I'll make, and then turn it over to other people who are happy to share. There are in our GEO REU handbook there's some guidance there. For instance, on the website, it itemizes in that chapter on creating an inclusive application things that you should have on your website, like that it's going to be paid, for example. Essential information. Also, what people look for, they often will, like students who are students of color will look to see, are there pictures with students of color, and not just one, highlighted person, but more than that. But also not, but also be authentic about whatever our pictures are. That don't sort of pretend that it's more whatever than it is. And I guess just a couple other points that have become sort of things that have become more mainstream is that people are moving away from long essay questions and moving towards, and same for references actually, but moving more towards short answer, or short to medium answer kinds of questions. And the trick is asking questions that are more informative than, how is this program going to help you with your career goals, which is pretty generic. And they can be much more informative, like, how do you plan to give back, or how have you given back, or that kind of thing. And then the other is that letters of recommendation are going by the wayside. If I'm sure some of you have read I mean, maybe all of you have read letters of recommendation, and when you start to look, it's pretty appalling, the differences between how people write about men, women, others, and um, you know, other marginalized students from other marginalized groups. It's really shocking, actually. And it's both, like in the case of women and men, and I haven't seen studies on other gender identities, but women are just as bad at writing these as biased. So people are moving more towards not asking for a letter, and instead asking for the names and emails of two people who would be the recommenders, and then paring down, and then when you get to the point of having your short list, for instance, then sending an email to those people and having them fill out a form that has also short answer stuff, so that you're not getting this crazy letter that people, are all over the place, and you're able to ask more specifics. So there's just a lot of research about the letters of recommendation, as there is about bias in all kinds of ways of selecting. Like, for example, Airbnb hosts are less likely to take guests who have names that don't sound like English, Anglo, if it's Indian or Asian or something, different. Um, and people, are reported to hire differently based on names. There's just a lot of things like that to be aware of, and also to train your colleagues. It's helpful to have a committee, even if it's a few people, to help you sort through, because if you're going to be using this new common application, there are going to be a lot of applications. And so there's some really simple ways to really narrow it down, and where you can like make bins of like definitely no, definitely yes, and then usually the hard ones are the maybes, and then you kind of go from there, and you can get your committee to just do that to start with, and that's a big time saver for you. I think that's a good approach. Those are really the things that I think I just wanted to make sure that we covered, and then otherwise it's, I'm eager to hear from everybody about and also questions. So how about if we start, Ruth, do you want to go ahead and share a little bit about um your approach, and then can ask
Sure.
questions?
And we're sort of in flux. And instead of preparing slides, I actually just was going to show you, kind of step you all through what we have done up until this coming year. And we just reapplied. So we're still waiting to hear about funding for the next time, but I'm hoping that we will get funded. But we have always used our own application portal and mentor. We have a mentor then review portal. So rather than trying to get everybody together to do like a committee, people can actually go into the portal, each individual mentor, even faculty who aren't going to mentor, review applications, provide comments, and then that all gets fed into a common system that you can see everybody else's comments and their
Oh,
reviews of students. So that's what we did up until this coming year. Assuming we get funded for this coming year, we are going to move to using the ETAP system. And I did go in and try, this is what I've been working on, one of my summer projects was trying to move our existing system of many little questions. And then we just have three sort of, probably by today's standards, they're called long answer, but the truth is I think they're still pretty short answer because some years ago we did truncate them down to being only, between 200 and 500 words. So we only have three questions like that, and the rest are all these little questions. But I don't know what anybody else's experiences would have been in ETAP, but I spent a couple days of my life entering all of our information in there. And then when I saved it, it would just delete everything. And after I did that 3 times, I decided that I was going to walk away from the system and let it think about what it's done wrong. And I have not gone back yet. So,
that's
so I can't
terrible.
show you. Yeah, it's been really frustrating. So I can't show you. So we exist as an opportunity. I can't show you what that would look like in ETAP, but I can show you what it looked like in our old portal.
Wow, that would be great. Well, that sounds absolutely ridiculous. Muy bien.
Yeah, actually, Ruth, I think the problem is ETAP will not show you the result until the website is published. That's what we discovered last year. So maybe that's why.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
You
Can you
have to
repeat it?
make sure ETAP is going live, then you can save your questions. Otherwise,
Oh,
you're not
like
able
there's
to.
a time, there's a launch date or something?
Something we set our launch date like the last day of December last year, and before that we cannot view it at all. So we basically save everything in the Word document, and then
Oh,
That's interesting. Well, I put in a ticket and I didn't get any response back. They asked me for more information. I submitted the more information. They asked me again for more information. I resent the same information, and then they just didn't respond. So I decided to just step away. But I was able to open an opportunity. I just can't add any questions. Whenever I try to add questions at the end of the page, it just deletes everything. So we'll figure it out though. We will.
yeah. And next Friday, if you can come, Cecilia, I can't remember, is Cecilia Speroni from NSF, who is the point person for us with ETAP. She's joining this conversation next week. And so she hopefully could answer something like that.
Yeah, I think it's just a technical thing, and we'll get it figured out. But we have a website. Our website is really simple. Can I share my screen?
Yes, please do.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it would let me. Okay. So you don't. Can you all see you can see my lovely kayak?
Yes.
Okay.
Tell us.
So this is what our website looks like. There are things I'm sure that we could do to improve our website, but right up front, you can click on the button to see what people need to see. And the thing that's been really good for us, one of the best things I did was I now do webinars. I do usually 4 of these every fall, and then I record at least one of them. I trim the beginning and end, and then I put this up, and it gives me a place where I can direct students if they cold call anytime during the process. But I will send out targeted invitations to all of our participating, institutions that are part of our consortium and that we're targeting, but I also advertise it publicly through all of our social media and through our partners. We don't get a huge attendance at these. It may be anywhere from 10 to 25 or 30 people. But what I
That's-
found is the return on investment is huge. Like if I get 10 students at these, usually 8 to 10 of them will apply. Whereas when I
Wow.
used to do only in-person visits, I might speak to 40 to 100 people, but I'd get 2 applications. So I've found these have been really useful, and the students have always said they really like them, because it just gives an opportunity to give tips and tricks on how to fill out the application and what the process really means, and they can ask questions. And it's more dynamic. We have videos in here where the students can talk about their projects and give little vignettes. So they're not just hearing from me, they're hearing from the students. And so we put that up here, and then we try to keep everyone up to date once we know we're funded for 3 years in advance. And then we have some brief program information and our authentic pictures, I hope. And then reiterate the eligibility and the pay part. And then now we're linking folks to the ETAP portal. But again, ours is closed until I can work out the ETAP bugs. But my goal is to have this going hopefully by the 15th. So that's the plan. But that's what our website looks like. And then as far as the application, and hopefully through ETAP, it'll be quite similar. But we ask the basic demographic questions. And originally on this application, the way we set up our demographic questions, they were all modeled after Mike Hubenthal's questions for the NSF evaluation, the big long-term evaluation from some years ago. I don't know if everybody remembers that or would know about it, but we basically wanted to make sure that we were collecting the exact data that NSF was going to use to do the program evaluation for all of the REU program, at least GEO. So ours is all aligned to that. And then we do make sure we have a diversity statement included somewhere on our application and on our page. And then we ask for gender identity. And some of these things I haven't yet figured out whether ETAP is actually asking the questions that we want in the way we want to ask them. So we'll probably have to refine the questions we ask in our answer.
I think on the gender one, most likely you want to add one because the one they have is not a good one.
I remembered that I wasn't thrilled with it. There are a couple of questions like that.
Yeah.
And also, I don't think they ask about military service. There are things I'm sure that we could do to improve our website, but right up front, you can click on the button to see what people need to see. And the thing that's been really good for us, one of the best things I did was I now do webinars. I do usually 4 of these every fall, and then I record at least one of them. I trim the beginning and end, and then I put this up, and it gives me a place where I can direct students if they cold call anytime during the process. But I will send out targeted invitations to all of our participating, institutions that are part of our consortium and that we're targeting, but I also advertise it publicly through all of our social media and through our partners. We don't get a huge attendance at these. It may be anywhere from 10 to 25 or 30 people, but what I found is the return on investment is huge. Like if I get 10 students at these, usually 8 to 10 of them will apply. Whereas when I used to do only in-person visits, I might speak to 40 to 100 people, but I'd get 2 applications. So I've found these have been really useful, and the students have always said they really like them, because it just gives an opportunity to give tips and tricks on how to fill out the application and what the process really means, and they can ask questions. And it's more dynamic. We have videos in here where the students can talk about their projects and give little vignettes. So they're not just hearing from me, they're hearing from the students. And so we put that up here, and then we try to keep everyone up to date once we know we're funded for 3 years in advance. And then we have some brief program information and our authentic pictures, I hope. And then reiterate the eligibility and the pay part. And then now we're linking folks to the ETAP portal. But again, ours is closed until I can work out the ETAP bugs. But my goal is to have this going hopefully by the 15th. So that's the plan. But that's what our website looks like. And then as far as the application, and hopefully through ETAP, it'll be quite similar. But we ask the basic demographic questions. And originally on this application, the way we set up our demographic questions, they were all modeled after Mike Hubenthal's questions for the NSF evaluation, the big long-term evaluation from some years ago. I don't know if everybody remembers that or would know about it, but we basically wanted to make sure that we were collecting the exact data that NSF was going to use to do the program evaluation for all of the REU program, at least GEO. So ours is all aligned to that. And then we do make sure we have a diversity statement included somewhere on our application and on our page. And then we ask for gender identity. And some of these things, I haven't yet figured out whether ETAP is actually asking the questions that we want in the way we want to ask them. So we'll probably have to refine the questions we ask in our
Yeah.
answer.
I think on the gender one, most likely you want to add one because the one they have is not a good one.
I remembered that I wasn't thrilled with it. There are a couple of questions like that.
Yeah.
And also, I don't think they ask about military service. I can't remember if I saw that in there or not. So there are some things extra things. And then we always have an open box for, hey, is there just anything you'd like us to know? And we just sort of give an example of, if you have any accommodations or just anything that we need to know and make it a free disclosure box. And some students really make use of that, which has been very useful for us to kind of know.
Oh, yeah.
And then we ask some things that, again, are NSF metric kind of things like, does your school have a graduate program and does it offer marine science courses and have you been able to take them? And sort of what are your prior experiences? We always try to sift out, of course, if they've had a prior REU experience, because sometimes students, we added that a few years ago because students wouldn't tell you, even if you asked,
Oh,
they wouldn't tell
wow.
you. So
And just by the way, everybody, so the general practice or guidance is that you don't have repeat, students don't do repeat or, a second REU. That said, for students who are from marginalized groups and underprivileged or underrepresented, if you talk to your program officer about it because you think this is going to help, your program is going to help that student, then program officers are generally fine with that kind of exception.
And then some of these other things we're probably going to drop off, like other colleges and universities you've attended. We never use that information. But then these are our short narratives. One is just a little personal statement, which we'll probably keep just because ETAP automatically asks that. And it looks like most other programs kind of have that. So I figured if students are going to write it anyway, we might as well go ahead and take the narrative statement. And then we have two other questions that we like to ask. One is about what did they like about their coursework and what have they done outside of coursework that kind of is exploring the field, because we get students who definitely aren't necessarily even sure they're interested in marine sciences. They might be interested in biomedicine and other things. And so we like to kind of see that intersection of what they're thinking about. And we certainly don't expect that our students have to go on to marine sciences or ocean sciences, but we kind of want to see what they're really excited about, because sometimes what they think they want to do and what they're truly excited about are two different things. And so that helps us get at that. And then also this one's kind of one of my favorite ones. What have you learned from someone who's different from you? Because it's really interesting to see what the students think is different from them versus the same, and also what they think is actually an important foundational life learning experience. It can be really, really interesting to tell you a little bit about these students and sort of where they're coming from. And we do still ask for 2 letters of recommendation. I think we've been really fortunate that for the most part, at least in the students where we've gotten to the point of actually really, when you're really reading the letters, often the letters will tell us things that the students themselves don't disclose. And so we've learned things about, like, if a student low income, is a student coming from some challenges or hardships, where we have found out information from a letter that actually changed the way we viewed an application. And so I'm not sure how I feel about, I think I love the idea of maybe sending a fill a form or something instead, but the way our system is set up, if they put in the name and the email address, we automatically generate the request for the letter. So we could generate a fill a form or something too. Yeah, Val?
Yeah, one approach that would still allow you to get the letters would be to at least pare down. So, if you get to 300 applications or something, to pare down to 30 or 50 or something like that, so that you're not asking as many people to write letters. That I know some programs have even 800 applicants and they have 2 letters of recommendation, and it's just brutal on the letter writers. So even getting to a short list, you know, to that point, I mean, we're maybe, as you say, you might find out information, but hopefully that person is in your kind of made like extended short list anyway, so that you could reduce the number. And then, so you get their emails and then you write to those people and asking for a letter.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And then the last part that's on here actually isn't something that's ever seen by the student. It's just that when I generated this off of our backend system, it actually shows the whole backend system, but this is what would be generated when our mentors go in. This is the section where a mentor could say a student's recommended or not, and the mentor would add their comments, and also where we on the backend keep track of whether that particular student was offered a position, whether they accepted it. And so the application for the student actually ends there.
Oh.
That's all
And
they
so
would do.
did you get this finished and up and running like right before ETAP was launched?
No, so this is how we've been doing it for the last 6 years or so. We've used the
Okay.
basic
Good,
system.
good.
I just go in and change the questions sometimes and tweak things around. Like we used to ask for 3 letters and very quickly realized that was just that was crazy. And we also do often consider, we don't necessarily exclude an application because they're missing a letter.
Oh, good.
We will look at applications anyway. Usually if they're missing 2 letters, we don't consider it, but if they're just missing 1, we don't.
I tried to Google ETAP and it gave me a whole bunch of stuff. So can you put a link into that software? I'm just curious about it.
Yeah, try Googling NSF ETAP.
Okay.
And it should, I think the URL is actually ETAP.
Oh, okay.
And it should, I believe it's active. I think you can just go there. I think anybody can go and see opportunities. It may have you just have to log in if you want to enter something.
Okay.
Any comments or
Yeah,
I guess
I have a question that just popped in my head. First of all, Ruth, I love that question about something you've learned from someone different from you. I might have to steal that one. I love that one. But the question I have really to the group and to Ruth, and maybe we need to address this stuff, is Supreme Court decision. Are we allowed to ask race questions? I mean, we need it for data purposes, but are we allowed to ask that on the application now, as long as we quote unquote don't use it as a decision metric? Does anybody know?
I thought it was in the ETAP demographic questions.
Yeah, but there's been a Supreme Court decision about that. So the question is
right.
NSF dealing with that? Are they going to give us guidance?
That's a great question, because if I'm going to guess that ETAP has not gotten to the point of removing that information for the people like us, and so it'll probably be included when you get this massive download of data. It'll probably be in there. My understanding is generally that it gets asked, like if you're hiring somebody, it gets asked and then but not used in selecting. And I don't know about in this case with ETAP. That will be interesting to see. Yeah, it's a great question. It's
so coming from a state where we are one of these unfortunate states that has passed legislation like this, we've had 2 pieces of feedback, and the way I've interpreted this, one is if we have federal funding, and federal funding requires us to say include trainings, have discussions, and also consider diversity in our proposal, that they can't tell us not to. And I'm in a state agency, and my folks here have said that yes, they will honor that if it's federal money, like the RU program, they would essentially consider us exempt until someone comes along and tells us otherwise.
Oh.
I can say, however, my university that I'm affiliated with completely disagrees with that. And they say as soon as the money comes into the state, it's no longer federal money, it's state money. which has raised all kinds of questions about, gee, then can we use it as match if it's state money? And of course we can't because it's federal money. So I'm like, you're going to count it as federal money sometimes and state money other times. So the university says no, but technically my employer, because I'm a state employee, says yes. So we're going to ride that as long as we can. But the other thing is, if you read the legislation, at least the one here, it says you can use no single criterion to make a hiring decision. But it doesn't say that you can't consider a suite of criteria among which that might be one of several. And so that's how I've also been interpreting that, is because we never make any of our decisions based on one thing, right? We look at the whole suite, the whole student, and what is their whole combination of factors. And then we also look at the other students who are in the cohort and try to make sure that it's a balanced, diverse cohort and an inclusive cohort. And so I think I don't know, if this ever push came to shove, but that's always been my argument when people ask me that question, is we've never looked at a single individual criterion for any student anyway.
Right.
Yeah, the Supreme Court last year changed that. And I mean, that was exactly the issue, is that universities were using quote unquote holistic admissions, and they were quite clear that race can no longer be factored in. So that's a national thing, not a state thing. So anyway, it would be nice if NSF would like to provide us some guidance. They might be doing the ostrich thing right now, but anyway, just a thought.
Yeah, they don't seem to get involved with that stuff, do they? Thank you, Ruth. Paulette, do you want to share a little bit? Or however much?
Sure. Well, I'm on starting year 3 of my summer REU. It's more of I don't know if it's an REU or more of an internship, because we do a little bit of both, kind of a little bit professional development, but a whole lot of Indigenous science education. I specifically reach out to Native Americans and Puerto Ricans and Native Hawaiians and Native Alaskans. So mine's a little different, because I'm looking at educating Native and Indigenous scholars by or with Native and Indigenous faculty and literature and community traditional ecological knowledge influence. So my internship's really, really different in that, yes, it is only for Native Americans, Alaska Natives, Native Hawaiians, and Puerto Ricans, because that is our research site, or our research sites for the larger NSF COPE grant. We're partnered with UCAR, NCAR, and Haskell Indian Nations University through the Haskell Foundation. And so our summer internship, it's harder. It's like you guys get a couple of hundred. Like if I get 30 applications, that's huge. I reach out specifically to tribal colleges, and there's 36, 39 of them. I also try to find MSI universities, and because a lot of those institutions don't teach Indigenous science or Indigenous methods and methodology. So let me share my screen for the application process. Let me see where find that screen and see if I can share that with you, because we do ask very specific questions. And there's not a lot. We do this kind of short essay type of questions. Now my PowerPoint doesn't want to come up.
Oh,
I'm sorry. There we go. Let's see this. So we have short questions. The cool thing is we have this rubric that we use, that we ask specific questions and look for things like enthusiasm. What is their knowledge around Indigenous knowledge or Indigenous science? Why this is not letting me have
if somebody
screen share.
has or doesn't have
There it is.
the indigenous
There
knowledge,
it is.
How do you?
Yeah, because it's not, Indigenous methods and methodologies are not taught at institutions. And for Native students and Native scholars, it's important that we not only learn from place-based knowledge specifically, because there's a depth to it from Indigenous perspectives. But so here's some of the questions, provided brief description of your interests, your education or career goals. I ask them what climate change means to them. I want them to really think critically about what does climate change mean to them, because I want to know, do they have a textbook answer? And if you look at the criteria, the first question criteria is, are they from a tribal college or minority student serving institution? And they get points for that. So for each criteria, there's a point system. We check, we ask not only for their responses, what is their understanding of TEK? In what ways might Western science and Indigenous knowledge benefit each other? And what are the things you hope to learn from this internship? It's also a unique internship because we not only look at how we engage with our research sites, which our research sites are Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Alaska, and Louisiana, but how they engage with their place. How are they grounded in their culture, or are they learning because they've grown up in the city or something, grown up outside of a Native community? We want to know if they are in sciences, because we do hope that they come from different sciences. We want to know how their opinion of how Western science and Indigenous knowledge can work together, because there's this big push for convergent knowledge, convergent science, and convergence comes from different worldviews and different disciplines coming together and trying to understand each other's methods and methodology, but also their philosophies and their practices of adaptation and such. So, I have these simple questions, is there anything else you'd like to share? And, we're not asking them what is their science background, but because that comes in another series of questions and responses. This NSF COPE grant is the largest grant awarded to a tribal college. It's what is it, 20 million over 5 years. And so I'm taking students each year to a different research site. So not only do they have to spend 4 weeks in the classroom, but they have to spend a little bit of time in place. So like year one, we researched Hawaii, and we took 8 interns to Hawaii, up to 2 islands, spent 10 days driving around the outside of the island, looking at the coast, the impacts from infrastructure, the impacts from erosion, the impacts from, whatever climate, sea level rise, king tides, all this, along with the other things like volcano, the earthquakes that the volcano creates. And, we talked about all these influences on the people of that place. And so they not only get an in-classroom submersion in climate science and Indigenous knowledge, but they also get to meet people, Native scientists that look like them, that practice in disciplines that they might be interested in. And we have this network through UCAR's Rising Voices, where we're able to pair up interns or people with scientists and provide them opportunities to things like the SOURCE program or the ASP program that UCAR NCAR has. And so we try to partner our students with UCAR NCAR in the long term. Like one of our interns did the SOURCE program the summer after he went to Hawaii. So it's really kind of important for us to try to match these interns with people that they can mentor them that are Native. And so this is this last summer's cohort where we went to Alaska. When we went to Alaska, we saw 2 sites. We spent 5 days in Anchorage and 4 days in Utqiagvik. It was life altering in some aspects. Some of these students had never been on an airplane. Some of these students had never been on a boat. And so, we really try hard to filter through the responses and the applications in a way that is diverse and unique and specializes in getting the students that are most appropriately suited for the program. Because we do a mix of both, literature review, and then essay writing. You know, they have to do a short video that talks about the program. So throughout the internship, they're taking videos. So they put it together at the end of the internship. So there's these little video clips of their experience, 3 to 10 minutes, you know. And so we do ask and point out the rubric to accommodate the specific things to our program. And is there anything else I'm missing, Val, that you think I should?
No, I have a question though, about, you know, some of the factors that you're considering and the rubric, and it's like you know, rubrics can be terrible and they can be well, I guess they may be able to be wonderful, I don't know, but often they're used with traditional metrics, which, as most of you know, or maybe all of you, that like GPA has a lot of privilege embedded in it because of the resources that a student may have or may not have. And so one thing that I wish I could find or ask or figure out how to find out is, and put in a rubric, is how much will the student benefit from the program? And you talked about, I mean, it's like the interesting things like how enthusiastic are they, and have they already expressed an interest in learning these things? And so is that something that you also try to, like, in your overall scheme of things, it's sort of like, you know, are they going to benefit from it?
Yes. A lot of it is training them to embrace their own cultural identity. It's a big push for them to understand the world through their own native lens, and to understand that native science is science, although a different method and methodology. It's still the same observation, you know, test, repeat, you know, and then analyze and repeat again, you know. So, I mean, obviously we've survived for tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, depending on what, you know, theory you subscribe to. So it's really, for me, it's important that we're more interested in their feelings and what kind of characteristics they bring to the program too. It's not, you know, we want to see people that, you know, maybe that are native and have no understanding of TEK. We want to see students that are in R1s and have no access to native programs because they may not even have a native on campus, let alone teaching something or in a position of science. So it's really important that for us that we get these students matched up with native scholars that they can, you know, talk to or get resources from or get advice from, or that can be mentoring them. And we have 3 native faculty that teach a different week. So we have multiple native perspectives in teaching methods and methodology, and it's all still wrapped around this idea of Indigenous methods and methodology and Indigenous science. So all the faculty bring not only some of their work, because they're all connected to climate research in one way or another, but we also show them as many native or as many UCAR, NCAR scientists as possible too that are doing climate work, so that they see that there's all kinds of different avenues and paths that can be taken to do the climate work that many of the social justice minded students we have are interested in already. So it's really, it's a lot of fun, really. I love what I do. It's really exciting. The students blow my mind every year. They're very emotional, and I don't know if that's just a generation thing, you know, because I know the 20-year-olds nowadays are very sensitive and very, I want to say emotional. They're very sensitive. So we try to have peer mentors. We try to have academic native scholar mentors, and we try to, you know, have scientist mentors, you know, and that blurs all the boundaries in between that. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, can you tell us about your rubric? Like what kinds of categories you have?
Oh, I showed it to you.
We did. Oh, okay, maybe I could.
Yeah, it was the criteria. The criteria responses is the rubric, and the faculty that we have Dr. Michelle Montgomery, who's Halawisa-Poni and Cherokee. We have DeAndre Smiles, who's Ojibwe. We have Wendy Todd, who's Haida, Alaska native, and then myself as an absentee Shawnee. And then Wildcat, Dr. Wildcat comes in and teaches in the morning, because we spend the first 2 hours of the morning in a talking circle, and then we go into a talking circle about the literature review and have them do an annotated bibliography so that they know what that is. And then they have to write these short essays, like storytelling, because that's an Indigenous method. So I want them to storytell and so a lot of them, that takes them out of their comfort zone of writing a technical document that maybe their advisors are teaching them to do, and teaches them to do a storytelling kind of method that might be useful to their communities at home. How are we transmitting the knowledge or redistributing the knowledge that we collect as scientists and as researchers, especially in a Native community? Well, these young people that's what the video idea came up, is like, we can take these videos and show them on our phones, or we can show them links and they can go to the website. And I don't even think our application's on our website right now. I haven't finished it for this year, because I usually don't open the application process until November. I go November to February, and then spend March going through the rubric and stuff with the other faculty. And each faculty scores each applicant. And then once we get the final applicant, we send out the acceptance letter, award letters, and then we find out at that point how many of them are still going to stay in the internship, because I've had, 2 drop every year. They get picked all the time, and then you're scrambling to try to find somebody else to fit that space. So yeah, it's a challenge, and there's so much competition out there for Native students to participate in different internships and stuff, and everybody wants to help the Native students and stuff. So it's kind of nice having something that grounds them in their own cultural traditions and knowledge systems, and makes them critically think about science, and gets them excited about the opportunities of having these other worldviews engaged in high sciences. So it's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
And we've had some students go on to graduate school because of our program. And so that's always exciting too. Because we work mostly with tribal college students, and they don't have the same access and resources and stuff. So our internship is paid. We pay for travel, we pay for food, we pay for the trip, we pay for, we pay our faculty intern trainers well, because they're Native, and we know that they're tasked with many hats, and often the only Native in their department, and sometimes in their whole school. So we try to make sure it's a very Native-centric program, so that Indigenous science and Indigenous knowledge can be recognized beyond the Western science lens, and because objectivity is completely subjective. I mean, we can pretend like we have this objective lens, but the reality is everything about how we grew up and how we were influenced and how we were trained, influences how we will ask a question, how we will analyze the data and stuff like that. So it's really important to have these students be empowered in their identities as Native people, and see Native scholars and leaders. So I really have to do a lot of relationship building, trying to get as many like elders. We want elders to tell stories about climate change to the youth. We want some of the youth in the program or in the community to be interested in maybe going to a tribal college or to college in general. And a lot of the people that we work with come from really, really impoverished communities. So to not only get to travel, but to be paid on the process can really change sometimes their life. Worked for me when I was an undergraduate student, because I was definitely not on the academic trail. I just wanted a better job. And I just kept succeeding and succeeding and succeeding, and I just kept following the breadcrumbs. And so I'm throwing breadcrumbs, now that I'm on the other side, I'm throwing breadcrumbs trying to get more students to come through the academic journey. Because it's a hard space to be a Native in academia is really tough. Like I had to fire an advisor in my master's program, and I almost fired an advisor in my PhD program, just because of the politics that comes along with being Native. You're always having to protect sovereignty or exercise or strengthen, build more sovereignty as a Native person. So all of your work is always about, how do I make my community better? And so we want these students to think that same way. How can I care how am I, because care is a principle that's taught. We're not, some people are caring people, they're just innately that way, but the reality is the average human being, we're taught to care through our culture, we're taught to care through our family, we're taught to care through our relationships with, other people. And so one of the things that we're teaching is the theory of care. And if you care about your environment, you're taught to care and taught how to care, then you become emboldened and strengthened and given a lot of empowerment, because it's, like I said, it is kind of, especially, I mean, I'm white passing, I didn't get away with a lot. My grandma used to call it camouflage, but especially for students that can't code switch as easily as I can, it's important for them to see, scholars that look like them, that think like them. And so we try very hard to do that. And it's been absolutely wonderful to have people like Kyle White available, and just Robin Kimmerer and stuff like that, or Patricia Cochran, who are willing to call in and just have a Zoom meeting with us for an hour with these students, and it blows their minds. They're just like, oh my God, I just met my hero, or something like that. And I get it. So yeah, it's a different approach. It's a different, it's the same and yet different because we're specifically, I don't want to say targeting, but amplifying the native lens and the native students, trying to make sure that they have the tools, not just the Western system tools that they're being taught K through 12 and then into college, but then Indigenous scholarship lens that makes them, makes them whole, more complete, more in touch with their communities too.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Sorry if I went on too long.
Well, I find it fascinating. I mean, to me, I love learning about it because I hear about, traditional ecological knowledge, and yeah, but it's helpful. It seems like a gem of a program you've got going, and people around the country are apparently recognizing that if they're hopping on calls with you. So
well, I do know that NSF is watching us closely. So is a bunch of other institutions, because we are doing this convergent knowledge approach. And we're working with 4 very different, very geographically distant and diverse sites. And it's been really at times difficult to try to wrap your head around how the sites connect. But through the climate change lens, it's really been really kind of neat, because we're showing that the same problems that are happening up in Alaska with the tundra collapsing and the melt and the erosion and the flooding and is causing similar responses, or it's not causing similar, similar problems are happening in Louisiana. And then like Hawaii and Puerto Rico, they have similar problems, but yet very different problems, because one's in the Atlantic, one's in the Pacific, one's, they're both islands. But so it's been interesting to try to find the connections between the sites, as well as collaborate between communities and the UCAR scientists to ground truth the climate models that they've been working on for us, because the communities have said they want downsize, and downsizing a climate model is difficult and takes a lot of memory, I guess. And so that's the big struggle, is they're trying to come together as a collaborative, convergent science group. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's probably more interesting for the NCAR scientists to work with the COPE project than the other way around, because
well, everybody's welcome to come to the Rising Voices meeting at UCAR NCAR. I put in the link for the research Rising Voices Changing Coast project, but I can but Rising Voices at UCAR is also another great way to meet and become acquainted with natives from all over the United States and Alaska, Hawaii, and the Pacific in general.
okay.
But here's the Rising Voices link for those of you that might be interested in learning more about, because Rising Voices has been going for 14 years now. And that's what the Changing Coast Hub came out of, was the collaboration between UCAR and NCAR scientists and people or faculty at Haskell Indian Nations University. And some of the people that have been coming to Rising Voices for years is how we wrote the grant, and that's how we were able to get into community within a couple of years as opposed to 5 years of trying to build a relationship with the community from scratch. We've been
Right.
building this community for years already, and this is kind of what has come out of it, is this big grant, and it's a journey.
So for everybody else, Paulette is going to be at the workshop and on a panel in Phoenix, and with 2 other Indigenous scholars. And at that, one of the things that I'm hoping that you can touch on is, if from sort of viewing from the perspective of a non-Indigenous internship, what would you want us to know about reaching students, bringing students in, and that kind of thing. So we can talk about that at the,
That'd be great.
yeah, maybe you and I can just stay on after for a minute to talk about the panel. Thank you again. Really, really appreciate it. And Tara, sorry we were out of time, but next week, if you're around, maybe you can share your things then.
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
I'm so
I
sorry,
really
Tara.
enjoyed. No, it was fascinating. I loved hearing it, and I can't wait to meet you in person. And then I loved hearing Ruth's and both of you with the video clips, and Ruth with your webinar. I mean, I'm just mentally taking notes, so it's all good.
Right. The 4 times the information webinar sounds really effective. Really, I mean, maybe I'll nudge you to talk about it on the REU email listserv as an effective way of recruiting.
Thank you, Val, for putting in the handbook, because I wanted to let everybody know, when I first did this, I was I just graduated my PhD, and then all of a sudden we have this grant. And so I was like just freaking out of not knowing what to do. And that REU handbook saved my life in so many places. So thank you. Because I was just winging it all the way through. So going into year 3 and having a new research site and everything, it's made my life easier. So
Good.
thank you for that workbook.
Yeah. And now I have you on tape saying that.
I was gonna say, can I second
Testimony.
that I've been I'm just fresh out of postdoc and program manager, and I found that handbook, and I call it the Bible, for helping me to develop these programs.
Oh my.
Yes, I second that.
Oh.
I found this group in the handbook, and so yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you. And that was a community effort. And now that you've been using it, then we can, improve it. I think it definitely, some of it is outdated, and we would love to, get people's input on how to improve things, like what are we missing and that kind of thing. Well, thank you, Shannon. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Another great conversation, and I'm really enjoying this format of, not having formal presenters, but having people pop up and share things. So if you have ideas about who else would be good for sharing things, please let me know. I'd appreciate that. And hopefully you can make it next week. I can't remember what the actual topic is, but I know that this person from NSF who is the point person for ETAP is planning to come. So that probably will end up being the large focus, I imagine. And I'm going to try to get some of the other NSF people to come too, so that they can help answer some questions. Okay, well, have a wonderful afternoon and weekend, and thank you everybody for coming and chiming in.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Nice meeting everyone. Bye.